Hello. Oh, better hide this so you can see the puppy when he shows up for a snack. Do I have all my... I'm gonna turn on one more light. It seems dark. Hi, Sharkies! Yeah, that's a little better. Is my audio coming through okay? It looks like it is on my end. It should be good. There was just a update for my software, and every now and then those updates can mess with the audio settings, but I checked them before I started, so. How's it going? How's your week so far? Ours has been weird. Our real estate agent let us know that we'd received an offer on the house, but then she sent us the details of the offer, and it was like a super low ball with a bunch of weird conditions on it, and like the dates were all messed up on the paperwork and stuff. There's just a bunch of stuff wrong with it. And so we've been dealing with like counter offers and things with these people, but it's been a little stressful. So finally our agent suggested that she just give their agent a call, tell them the lowest we're willing to go, and then, if they can't go meet us at there, then we just say, okay, thank you, goodbye. So that's been a little stressful for us this week, just dealing with that mess. Some of their conditions were really weird too. Like some of the stuff they had in their original contract was like they wanted they wanted the completion date to be really soon and really quickly, and they wanted it on like kind of a weird day, like it was on like the 22nd of October, so not even at like the end of the month. And the date that they were suggesting for everything was a Friday, which our agent was like, that's not a good idea, because if there's any problems, then they like it being on a Friday causes issues. And then they had in the contract that was like the completion date, but then they were going to be like renting the house back to us for 2 months. And so we were like, no, we don't want that. Your conditions are weird, and we don't want them. So this whole thing has been odd. It could have been, except that it was in the contract. Like they put it in the contract in the first place, which means that if we had like accepted their terms, then we would have been agreeing to it. So I don't know. Like they didn't talk to us about it first. They just sent us a contract. It wasn't up to. Oh, I see. I missed that. Yeah, the whole thing was odd. So, at least we have now given them our like final number, and either they agree to that and our terms, or we just don't deal with them anymore. So, annoying, but should be basically over. I'm not expecting them to agree to it though, based on how much they were like lowering the price. So how's your week been? That's other than that, all I've been really been up to is I've gotten back into playing Cyberpunk 2077, which I hadn't played since like January or something of 2021 was the last time I played. A little while ago. Started a new game on that because they've done a lot of updates. You had relatives who sold a few years ago, accepted the offer, but then after that, the buyer wanted the relatives to apply for a building permit with the city for the builder. That seems like, I mean, like, that's a little weird. Kind of like, okay, you want us to do you a favor after we've, like, finished our agreements is odd. Did it cause a big problem for your relatives, or was it just a weird thing? Successfully sold with the original deal without the after the fact favor. Yeah. Yeah, that seems like, I don't know, applying for permits is not really a small task, right? It's kind of a headachy paperwork deal. And I don't know. I mean, I would assume that the buyer would be like, also, here's the money for it, but permits usually cost money, right? I don't know. That's definitely weird. The relative's realtor was trying to get the relatives. Was the realtor representing both buyer and seller? Or their realtor just like agreed to that favor without permission? That's odd. We are lucky in that our realtor seems to be very good. She's very professional. um, she seems to catch any sort of weird details and things like that. She actually is the one that helped us buy this place in the first place. I see. Yeah, that's a weird thing to agree to without permission. So yeah, that's So how about this book? We're on page 115. First aid training. Was that super boring? It's been a while since I've done a first aid training course. Shorter than expected is good. I think the last sort of training course thing I did was probably um, firearm safety. So, like a Ben Stein sort of trainer. So where did we start last time? Trying to figure out everything that we kind of covered. I think it was roughly around when the guards all started drinking. Did we have the meeting with the patrician as well? I'm not sure. Um, Sadly, Vimes also had a drink. Which, you know, I had forgotten that part. I had thought that Vimes was done drinking after guards. But apparently he's taking this pretty hard. Sergeant Colin, I think, found that pin stuck in his boot sandal. I think Vimes might already be at the dinner party. And we got... we found out... We definitely found out for the first time that Angua is in fact a werewolf. Although it seems like of the turns into kind of a wolfhound sort of variety, more so than the great shaggy beast kind of variety. She seems to be able to pass for a dog pretty well. Excuse me. And so that's more or less what we covered last time. So I think I'm just going to get into it. We'll see how far we go. I'm a little worn out today, so I don't think I'm going to go super late. And also, I just ate a bunch of Taco Bell, so I can't make any long-term promises at this point. Who knows how long I'm going to survive. So yeah, let's get to it, huh? Yeah. And I'll be here on Friday, barring any unexpected circumstances. I will actually be here for Friday's stream this time. So we'll have 2 in 1 week for once. I'm sorry, I've been missing so many. Okay, I'm getting into it. I've got a good voice for this one. This unrest is all Vetinari's fault, said the Duke of Eorl. The man has no style. So now, of course, we have a city where grocers have as much influence as barons. He even let the plumbers form a guild. That's against nature, in my humble opinion. I don't know if we had a voice for the Duke of Eorl before, but we do now. It wouldn't be so bad if he set some kind of social example, said Lady Omnius. Omnius, not ominous. Different connotation there. Lady Omnius. or even governed, said Lady Salaci. People seem to be able to get away with anything. I admit that the old kings were not necessarily our kind of people towards the end, said the Duke of Eorl. But at least they stood for something, in my humble opinion. We had a decent city in those days. People were more respectful and knew their place. People put in a decent day's work. They didn't laze around all the time. And we certainly didn't open the gates to whatever riffraff was capable of walking through. And, of course, we also had law. Isn't that so, Captain? Oh, what a nice guy the Duke of Eorl is. I bet Vimes is going to take really well to him, huh? Yeah. Everything he just said, Vimes is going to agree 100%. Captain Samuel Vimes stared glassily at a point somewhere to the left and just above the speaker's left ear. I feel like that sort of stare comes up quite frequently in the Discworld. The like... Oh, it's to the left. Yes, I'm listening to everything you're saying right now. Cigar smoke hung almost motionless in the air. Vimes was dimly aware that he'd spent several hours eating too much food in the company of people he didn't like. He longed for the smell of damp streets and the feel of the cobbles under his cardboard soles. A tray of postprandial drinks was orbiting the table. Postprandial. Prandial is during or relating to dinner or lunch. I don't think, other than seeing it in print, I don't think I've heard that one before. After dinner drinks, postprandial drinks. But Vimes hadn't touched it, because it upset Sybil. And she tried not to show it, and that upset him even more. The bear huggers had worn off. He hated being sober. It meant he started to think. One of the thoughts jostling for space was that there was no such thing as a humble opinion. He hadn't had much experience with the rich and powerful. Brandies. He hadn't had much experience with the rich and powerful. Coppers didn't, as a rule. It wasn't that they were less prone to commit crimes. It was just that the crimes they committed tended to be so far above the normal level of criminality that they were beyond the reach of men with bad boots and rusting mail. Owning 100 slum properties wasn't a crime, although living in one was, almost. Being an assassin. The guild never actually said so, but an important qualification was being the son or daughter of a gentleman. Wasn't a crime. If you had enough money, you could hardly commit crimes at all. You just perpetrated amusing little peccadillos. Peccadillos? Peccadillos? BBAB! Hello, hello, you haven't missed much. Welcome. How's your Wednesday going? We are getting some of Vimes's opinions on rich people, which the opinions don't seem to be super positive so far. Some social commentary. And now, everywhere you look, it's uppity dwarfs and trolls and rude people. Peccadillo? Sharkies remember learning years ago in sociology that white-collar crime in monetary terms costs society far more than the more commonly thought types of crime. It's a very Wednesday of a Wednesday. Yeah, I can feel that. This is probably not going to be a super long stream. We'll see how it goes. But I've had a tiring week so far. Okay, so uppity dwarfs and trolls and rude people, said Lady Salachi. There's more dwarfs in Ankh-Morpork now than there are in any of their own cities, or whatever they call their holes. What do you think, Captain? Said the Duke of Eorl. Captain Vimes picked up a grape and started turning it over and over in his fingers. Oh boy. The current ethnic problem. Are we having one? Well, yes. Look at Quarry Lane. There's fighting there every night. And they have absolutely no concept of religion. Vimes examined the grape minutely. What he wanted to say was, of course they fight. They're trolls. Of course they bash one another with clubs. Trollish is basically body language, and, well, they like to shout. In fact, the only one who ever gives anyone any real trouble is that bastard Chrysophrase, and that's only because he apes humans and is a quick learner. As for religion, troll gods were hitting one another with clubs 10,000 years before we'd even stopped trying to eat rocks. But the memory of the dead dwarf stirred something perverse in his soul. He put the grape back on his plate. Definitely, he said. In my view, the godless bastards should be rounded up and marched out of the city at spear point. There was a moment's silence. It's no more than they deserve, Vimes added. Exactly. They're barely more than animals, said Lady Omnius. Vimes suspected her first name was Sarah. Have you noticed how massive their heads are? Said Vimes. That's really just rock. Very small brains. And morally, of course, said Lord Eorl. There was a murmur of vague agreement. Vimes reached for his glass. Willikins, I don't think Captain Vimes wants any wine, said Lady Ramkin. Wrong, said Vimes cheerfully. And while we're on the subject, how about the dwarfs? I don't know if anyone's noticed, said Lord Eorl, but you certainly don't see as many dogs about as you used to. Vimes stared. It was true about the dogs. There didn't seem to be quite so many mooching around these days. That was a fact. But he'd visited a few dwarf bars with Carrot, and he knew that dwarfs would indeed eat dog, but only if they couldn't get rat. And 10,000 dwarfs eating continuously with knife, fork, and shovel wouldn't make a dent in Ankh-Morpork's rat population. It was a major feature in dwarfish letters back home. Come on, everyone, and bring the ketchup. Notice how small their heads are? He managed. Very limited cranial capacity, surely. Fact of measurement. And you never see their women, said Lady Sarah Omnius. I find that very suspicious. You know what they say about dwarfs, she added darkly. Vimes sighed. He was just about aware that you saw their women all the time, although they looked just like the male dwarfs. Surely everyone knew that, who knew anything about dwarfs? Cunning little devils, too, said Lady Salaci, sharp as needles. You know, Vimes shook his head. You know, that's what's so damn annoying, isn't it? The way they can be so incapable of any rational thought, and so bloody shrewd at the same time. Only Vimes saw the look Lady Ramkin flashed him. Lord Eorl stubbed out his cigar. They just move in and take over, and work away like ants all the time real people should be getting some sleep. It's not natural. Vimes's mind circled the comment and compared it to the earlier one about a decent day's work. Well, one of them won't be working so hard, said Lady Omnius. My maid said one of them was found in the river this morning. Probably some tribal war or something. Ha! It's a start, anyway, said Lord Eorl, laughing. Not that anyone will notice one more or less. Vimes smiled brightly. There was a wine bottle near his hand, despite Willikin's tactful best efforts to remove it. The neck looked invitingly grippable. He was aware of eyes on him. He looked across the table into the face of a man who was watching him intently, and whose last contribution to the conversation had been, "Could you be so kind as to pass me the seasonings, Captain?" Yes, I'm sorry, everyone. This book definitely goes heavy on the social commentary at times, and it's not easy to read. I'm just trying to keep in mind that, well, some of these people are supposed to sound terrible, and Vimes is up to something, I hope. Excuse me. There was nothing remarkable about the face, except for the gaze, which was absolutely calm and mildly amused. It was Dr. Cruce's. Vimes had the strong impression that his thoughts were being read. Samuel! Vimes's hand stopped halfway to the bottle. Willikins was standing next to her ladyship. Apparently there's a young man at the door asking for you, said Lady Ramkin. Corporal Carrot. Gosh, this is exciting, said Lord Eorl. Has he come to arrest us, do you think? Ha ha ha. Ha, said Vimes. Lord Eorl nudged his partner. I expect that somewhere a crime is being committed, he said. Yes, said Vimes. Quite close, I think. Carrot was shown in, with his helmet under his arm at a respectful angle. He gazed at the select company, licked his lips nervously, and saluted. Everyone was looking at him. It was hard not to notice Carrot in a room. There were bigger people than him in the city. He didn't loom. He just seemed, without trying, to distort things around him. Everything became background to Corporal Carrot. At ease, Corporal, said Vimes. What's up? I mean, he added quickly, knowing Carrot's erratic approach to colorful language, what is the reason for you being here at this time? Got something to show you, sir. Sir, I think it's from the We'll just go and talk about it outside, shall we? Said Vimes. Dr. Cruces hadn't twitched a muscle. Lord Eorl sat back. Well, I must say I'm impressed, he said. I'd always thought you watchmen were a pretty ineffective lot, but I see you're pursuing your duty at all times. Always on the alert for the criminal mind, eh? Oh, yes, said Vimes. The criminal mind. Yes. The cooler air of the ancestral hallway came as a blessing. He leaned against the wall and squinted at the card. Gone? You know you said you saw something in the courtyard, Carrot began. What's a gone? Maybe something wasn't in the Assassin's Museum, and they put this sign on it, said Carrot. You know, like, removed for cleaning. They do that in museums. No, I shouldn't think that... What do you know about museums, anyway? Oh, well, sir, said Carrot. I sometimes visit them on my day off. The one in the university, of course, and Lord Vetinari lets me look around the old palace one, and then there's the guild ones. They generally let me in if I ask nicely. And there's the Dwarf Museum off Rhyme Street. Is there? Said Vimes, interested despite himself. He'd walked along Rhyme Street 1,000 times. Yes, sir, just up Whirligig Alley. Fancy that. What's in it? Many interesting examples of dwarf bread, sir. Yeah. Vimes thought about this for a moment. That's not important right now, he said. This isn't how you spell gone, anyway. Yes, it is, sir, said Carrot. I meant it's not how gone is normally spelled. He flicked the card back and forth in his fingers. A man'd have to be a fool to break into the Assassin's Guild, he said. Yes, sir. The anger had burned away the fumes. Once again he felt not the thrill, that wasn't the right word, the sense of something. He still wasn't sure what it was, but it was there, waiting for him. Samuel Vimes, what's going on? Lady Ramkin shut the dining room door behind her. I was watching you, she said. You were being very rude, Sam. I was trying not to be. Lord Eorl is a very old friend. Is he? Well, I've known him for a long time. I can't stand the man, actually. But you were making him look foolish. He was making himself look foolish. I was merely helping. But I've often heard you being rude about dwarfs and trolls. That's different. I've got a right. That idiot wouldn't know a troll if it walked over him. Oh, he would know if a troll walked over him, said Carrot helpfully. Some of them weigh as much as... What's so important, anyway? Said Lady Ramkin. We're looking for whoever killed Chubby, said Vimes. Lady Ramkin's expression changed instantly. Well, that's different, of course, she said. People like that should be publicly flogged. Why did I say that? Thought Vimes. Maybe because it's true. The gone goes missing. Next minute there's a little dwarf artificer thrown in the river with a nasty draft where his chest should be. They're linked. Now all I have to do is find the links.
Carrot, can you come back with me to Hammerhawk's?
Yes, Captain. Why?
I want to see inside that workshop. And this time, I've got a dwarf with me.
More than that, he added. I've got Corporal Carrot. Everyone likes Corporal Carrot. Vimes listened while the conversation droned on in Dwarfish. Carrot seemed to be winning, but it was a near thing. The clan was giving in not because of reason or in obedience to the law, but because it was Carrot who was asking. Finally, the corporal looked up. He was sitting on a dwarf stool, so his knees practically framed his head. You have to understand, you see, that a dwarf's workshop is very important.
Right,
said Vimes.
I understand.
And, you're a bigger.
Sorry?
A bigger than a dwarf.
Ah.
The inside of a dwarf's workshop is like, well, it's like the inside of his clothes, if you know what I mean. They say you can look if I'm with you, but you mustn't touch anything. They're not very happy about this, Captain. A dwarf who was possibly Mrs. Hammerhawk produced a bunch of keys.
I've always got on well with dwarfs,
said Vimes. They're not happy, sir. They don't think we'll do any good.
We'll do our best.
I didn't translate that properly. They don't think we're any good. They don't mean to be offensive, sir. They just don't think we'll be allowed to get anywhere, sir.
Oh!
Sorry about that, Captain. Sorry, there's a scene break here. I guess that may not have been quite understandable verbally. Suddenly, pain. Sorry about that, Captain, said Carrot, who was walking like an inverted L. After you. Mind your head on the...
Ow!
Perhaps it'd be best if you sat down and I'll look around. The workshop was long and, of course, low, with another small door at the far end. There was a big workbench under a skylight. On the opposite wall was a forge and a tool rack. And a hole. A chunk of plaster had fallen away a few feet above the ground, and cracks radiated away from the shattered brickwork underneath. Vimes pinched the bridge of his nose. He hadn't found time to sleep today. That was another thing. He'd have to get used to sleeping when it was dark. He couldn't remember when he'd last slept at night. He sniffed.
I can smell fireworks,
he said. Could be from the forge, said Carrot. Anyway, trolls and dwarfs have been letting fireworks off all over the city. Vimes nodded.
All right, he said. So, what can we see?
Someone thumped the wall pretty hard just here, said Carrot.
Could have happened at any time,
said Vimes. No, sir, because there's the plaster dust underneath, and a dwarf always keeps his workshop clean.
Really?
There were various weapons, some of them half-finished, on racks by the bench. Vimes picked up most of a crossbow.
He did good work,
he said.
Very good at mechanisms.
Well known for it, said Carrot, poking around aimlessly on the bench. A very delicate hand. He made musical boxes for a hobby. Could never resist a mechanical challenge. What are we looking for
Actually, sir? Not sure. Now this is good. It was a war axe, and so heavy that Vimes's arm sagged. Intricate etched lines covered the blade. It must have represented weeks of work. Not your actual Saturday night special, eh? Oh, no, said Carrot. That's a burial weapon. I should think it is. I mean, it's made to be buried with a dwarf. Every dwarf is buried with a weapon, you know, to take with him to wherever he's going. But it's fine workmanship, and it's got an edge like, Vimes sucked his finger. Like a razor. Carrot looked shocked. Of course. It'd be no good to him facing them with an inferior weapon. What them are you talking about? Anything bad he encounters on his journey after death, said Carrot, a shade awkwardly. Ah. Vimes hesitated. This was an area in which he did not feel comfortable. It's an ancient tradition, said Carrot. I thought dwarfs didn't believe in devils and demons and stuff like that. That's true, but we're not sure if they know. Oh. That's good. Vimes laid down the axe and picked up something else from the work rack. It was a knight in armor, about 9 inches high. There was a key in its back. He turned it, and then nearly dropped the thing when the figure's legs started to move. He put it down, and it began to march stiffly across the floor, waving its sword. Moves a bit like Colin, don't it? Said Vimes. Clockwork. It's the coming thing, said Carrot. Mr. Hammerhawk was good at that. Vimes nodded. We're looking for anything that shouldn't be here, he said. Or something that should be and isn't. Is there anything missing? Hard to say, sir. It isn't here. What? Anything that's missing, sir, said Carrot conscientiously. I mean, said Vimes patiently, anything not here which you'd expect to find. Well, he had, all the usual tools, sir. Nice ones, too. Shame, really. What is? Kind of blended the voices for a moment. They'll be melted down, of course. Vimes stared at the neat racks of hammers and files. Why? Can't some other dwarf use them? What? Use another dwarf's actual tools? Carrot's mouth twisted in distaste, as though someone suggested he wear Corporal Nobb's old shorts. Oh, no, that's not right. I mean, they're part of him. I mean, someone else using them, after he's used them all these years. I mean, ugh. Really? The clockwork soldier marched under the bench. It'd feel wrong, said Carrot. Yucky. Oh. Vimes stood up. Oh! Mind your head. Sorry. So this is definitely an interesting approach here. We've got the whole, blatant racism about dwarfs, and then we go and learn about dwarfs and get a bunch of minute details about the way they think about things and things like that.
Rubbing his head with one hand, Vimes used the other to examine the hole in the plaster.
"There's something in here,"
he said.
"Pass me one of those chisels."
There was silence.
"A chisel, please. If it makes you feel any better, we are trying to find out who killed Mr. Hammerhawk. All right?"
Carrot picked one up, but with considerable reluctance.
"This is Mr. Hammerhawk's chisel, this is," he said reproachfully. "Corporal Carrot, will you stop being a dwarf for 2 seconds? You're a guard, and give me that damn chisel. It's been a long day. Thank you."
Vimes prized at the brickwork, and a rough disk of lead dropped into his hand.
"Slingshot?"
said Carrot.
"No room in here,"
said Vimes.
"Anyway, how the hell could it get this far into the wall?"
He slipped the disc into his pocket.
"That seems about it, then,"
he said, straightening up.
"We'd better— Ow! Oh, fish out that clockwork soldier, will you? Better leave the place tidy."
Carrot scrabbled in the darkness under the bench. There was a rustling noise.
"There's a piece of paper under here, sir."
Carrot emerged, waving a small yellowing sheet. Vimes squinted at it.
"Looks like nonsense to me," he said eventually. "It's not dwarfish, I know that. But these symbols, these things I've seen before, or something like them."
He passed the paper back to Carrot.
"What can you make of it?"
Who here's seen Airplane? Carrot frowned.
"I could make a hat," he said, "or a boat, or some sort of chrysanthemum." "I mean the symbols. These symbols just here."
That's an old joke. I mean, I know this book is from the 90s, but... oh boy.
"Dunno, Captain. They do look familiar, though. Sort of like Alchemists' writing?" "Oh, no!"
Vimes put his hands over his eyes.
"Not the bloody Alchemists. Oh, no! Not that bloody gang of mad firework merchants. I can take the assassins, but not those idiots. No, please. What time is it?"
Carrot glanced at the hourglass on his belt.
"About 11:30, Captain." "And I'm off to bed. Those clowns can wait until tomorrow. You could make me a happy man by telling me that this paper belonged to Hammerhawk." "Doubt it, sir." "Me too. Come on, let's go out through the back door."
Carrot squeezed through.
"Mind your head, sir."
Vimes, almost on his knees, stopped and stared at the doorframe.
"Well, Corporal," he said eventually, "we know it wasn't a troll that did it, don't we? 2 reasons. 1, a troll couldn't get through this door. It's dwarf-sized.
What's the other reason, sir? Vimes carefully pulled something off a splinter on the low door lintel.
The other reason, Carrot, is that trolls don't have hair.
The couple of strands that had been caught in the grain of the beam were red and long. Someone had left them there inadvertently. Someone tall. Taller than a dwarf, anyway. Vimes peered at them. They looked more like threads than hair. Fine red threads. Oh well. A clue was a clue. He carefully folded them up in a scrap of paper. Hear that, everyone? A clue is a clue. It's not a hint. He carefully folded them up in a scrap of paper borrowed from Carrot's notebook and handed them to the corporal.
Here, keep this safe.
They crawled out into the night. There was a narrow plank walkway attached to the walls, and beyond that was the river. Vimes straightened up, carefully.
I don't like this, Carrot,
he said.
There's something bad underneath all this.
Carrot looked down.
I mean, there are hidden things happening,
said Vimes patiently.
Yes, sir. Let's get back to the yard.
They proceeded to the brass bridge, quite slowly, because Carrot cheerfully acknowledged everyone they met. Hard-edged ruffians whose normal response to a remark from a watchman would be genteelly paraphrased by a string of symbols generally found on the top row of a typewriter's keyboard. I guess that's talking about like censor, like $, pound, asterisk, exclamation mark kind of thing. Would actually smile awkwardly and mumble something harmless in response to his hearty, "Good evening, Masher. Mind how you go." Vimes stopped halfway across the bridge to light his cigar, striking a match on one of the ornamental hippos. Then he looked down into the turbid waters.
Carrot?
Yes, Captain.
Do you think there's such a thing as a criminal mind?
Carrot almost audibly tried to work this out. What? You mean like Mr. Cut-Me-Own-Throat Dibbler, sir?
He's not a criminal.
You have eaten one of his pies, sir?
I mean, yes, but he's just geographically divergent in the financial hemisphere.
Sir?
I mean, he just disagrees with other people about the position of things, like money. He thinks it should all be in his pocket. No, I meant.
Vimes closed his eyes and thought about cigar smoke and flowing drink and laconic voices. I think it's laconic, not like Lasonic, Laconic, which I think means kind of like sort of sleepy, but not necessarily in a tired way. Sleepy voices. I think that's what laconic means. There were people who'd steal money from people. Fair enough. That was just theft. But there were people who, with one easy word, would steal the humanity from people. That was something else. The point was, well, he didn't like dwarfs and trolls. But he didn't like anyone very much. The point was that he moved in their company every day, and he had a right to dislike them. The point was that no fat idiot had the right to say things like that. He stared at the water. One of the piles of the bridge was right below him. The Ankh sucked and gurgled around it. Debris, balks of timber, branches, rubbish. Oh, okay. Is there more than one definition? Because I feel like that doesn't fit very well. Debris had piled up in a sort of sordid floating island. There was even fungus growing on it. What he could do with right now was a bottle of bear huggers. The world swam into focus when you looked at it through the bottom of a bottle. Something else swam into focus. Doctrine of signatures, thought Vimes. That's what the herbalists call it. It's like the gods put a "use me" label on plants. If a plant looks like a part of the body, it's good for ailments peculiar to that part. There's teeth wart for teeth, spleen wart for spleens, eye bright for eyes. There's even a toadstool called Phallus imputicus, and I don't know what that's for, but Nobby is a big man for mushroom omelets. Now, either that fungus down there is exactly the medicine for hands, or... Vimes sighed.
Carrot, can you go and get a boat hook, please?
Carrot followed his gaze.
Just to the left of that log, Carrot.
Oh, no!
I'm afraid so. Haul it out, find out who he was, and make out a report for Sergeant Colin.
The corpse was a clown. Once Carrot had climbed down the pile and moved the debris aside, he floated face up, a big sad grin painted on his face. He's dead!
Catching, isn't it?
Vimes looked at the grinning corpse. Don't investigate. Keep out of it. Leave it to the assassins and bloody Quirk. Those are your orders.
Corporal Carrot.
Sir? These are your orders. Well, damn that. What did Vetinari think he was? Some kind of clockwork soldier?
We're going to find out what's been going on here.
Yes, sir!
Whatever else happens, we're going to find out.
Yeah, that was a little obvious even for Carrot. Let's see how long. I think we can read this next bit. It's not too much longer. It's like a page and a half. So I'll do that at least. And then we'll assess where we're at. See how everyone's feeling. The river Ankh, everybody ready for another one of these? Is probably the only river in the universe on which the investigators can chalk the outline of the corpse. Dear Sergeant Colin, I hope you are well. The weather is fine. This is a corpse who we fished out of the river last night, but we don't know who he is except he is a member of the Fool's Guild called Beano. Okay, so clowns do fall under the Fool's Guild. For some reason I was thinking that the Fool's Guild and like maybe there was a Clown's Guild that was separate. Evocative. Because of course the previous Discworld book we read had quite liberal mention of the Fools Guild.
He has been seriously hit on the back of the head and has been stuck under the bridge for some time. He is not a pretty sight. Captain Vimes says to find out things. He says he thinks it is mixed up with the murder of Mr. Hammerhawk. He says talk to the fools. He says do it. Also, please find attached piece of paper. Captain Vimes says, try it out on the Alchemists.
Sergeant Colin stopped reading for a while to curse out all alchemists. Different majors, yeah.
Because it is puzzling evidence. Hoping this finds you in good health, yours faithfully, Carrot Ironvounderson, Corporal.
The sergeant scratched his head. What the hell did that all mean?
Just after breakfast, a couple of senior jesters from the Fools Guild had come to pick up the corpse. Corpses in the river. Well, there was nothing very unusual about that. But it wasn't the way clowns died, usually. After all, what did a clown have that was worth stealing? What sort of danger was a clown? As for the alchemists, he was blowed if he was... Of course, he didn't have to. He looked up at the recruits. They had to be good for something. Cuddy and Detritus, don't salute!
That's just Detritus's name at this point. Detritus, don't salute!
I've got a little job for you. Just take this piece of paper to the Alchemists Guild, all right? And ask one of the loonies to tell you what he makes of it.
Where's the Alchemist Guild, Sergeant? Said Cuddy.
In the Strait of Alchemists, of course, said Colin. At the moment. But I should run if I was you.
So, it's just past 8 o'clock. We've only been at this for an hour. I mean, reading for like 45 minutes. This next bit goes on for about 8 pages. So it's not a small part, so we could either read some and stop partway through, read all of it, or stop now. How's everybody feeling? Extra sleepy or extra awake? Those are your only 2 options. Parmos is feeling not extra awake. Sharkies are up for part, so maybe like 4 pages or something. Wherever we find a good stopping point. Is Farmos okay with that? Sure, okay. The Alchemists Guild is opposite the Gamblers Guild. Usually. Sometimes it's above it, or below it, or falling in bits around it. The gamblers are occasionally asked why they continue to maintain an establishment opposite a guild which accidentally blows up its guild hall every few months. And they say, "Did you read the sign on the door when you came in?" The troll and the dwarf walked towards it, occasionally barging into each other by deliberate accident.
Anyway, you so clever. He gave paper to me.
Ha! Can you read it then? Can you?
No, I tell you to read it. That called delegation.
Ha! Can't read? Can't count? Stupid troll!
Not stupid.
Ha! Yes? Everyone knows trolls can't even count up to 4. Footnote. In fact, trolls traditionally count like this: 1, 2, 3, many. And people assume this means they can have no grasp of higher numbers. They don't realize that many can be a number. As in, 1, 2, 3, many, many 1, many 2, many 3, many, many. Many, many 1, many, many 2, many, many 3, many, many, many. Many, many, many 1, many, many, many 2, many, many, many 3, lots. End of footnote.
Eater of rats.
How many fingers am I holding up? You tell me, Mr. Clever Rocks in the Head.
Many.
Detritus hazarded. Har har, no, 5. You'll be in big trouble on payday. Sergeant Colin'll say, "Stupid troll, he won't know how many dollars I give him. Ha! How come you read the notice about joining the watch anyway? Got someone to read it to you?" That feels like a trap question, Sharkies.
How come you read notice? Get someone to hold you up?
They walked into the door of the Alchemists' Guild.
I knock. My job.
I'll knock! Oh yeah, probably. When Mr. Sendivoge, the guild secretary, opened the door, it was to find a dwarf hanging on the knocker and being swung up and down by a troll. He adjusted his crash helmet. "Yes?" he said. Cuddy let go. Detritus's massive brows knitted.
You loony bastard. What you make of this?"
he said. Sendivoge stared from Detritus to the paper. Cuddy was struggling to get around the troll, who was almost completely blocking the doorway. "What did you go and call him that for?"
"Sergeant Colin," he said.
"I could make a hat out of it," said Sendivoge. "Or a string of dollies, if I could get some scissors." Scenery? No, this is the Alchemists' Guild they're at, not the Fool's Guild. Well, but lots is 3 threes. Or 4 threes? Actually, I'm not sure. Because there's many, many, many 3, and then lots. So I guess 4 and many is 3. Yeah. I'm not doing math. What my colleague means, sir, is can you help us in our inquiries re the writing on this alleged piece of paper here, said Cuddy. Alleged piece of paper. That bloody hurt. Sendivoge peered at him. Are you watchman? He said. I'm Lance Constable Cuddy, and this, said Cuddy, gesturing upwards, is Lance trying to be Constable Detritus. Don't salute. Oh. There was a thump, and Detritus slumped sideways. Suicide Squad, is he? Said the alchemist. He'll come round in a minute, said Cuddy. It's the saluting. It's too much for him. You know trolls. Sendivoge shrugged and stared at the writing. Looks familiar, he said. Seen it somewhere before. Here. You're a dwarf, aren't you? It's the nose, isn't it? Said Cuddy. It always gives me away. Well, I'm sure we always try to be of help to the community, said Sendivoge. Do come in. Cuddy's steel-tipped boots kicked Detritus back into semi-sensibility, and he lumbered after them. Why the crash helmet, mister, said Cuddy, as they walked along the corridor. All around them was the sound of hammering. The guild was usually being rebuilt. Sendivoge rolled his eyes. Balls, he said. Billiard balls, in fact. I knew a man who played like that, said Cuddy. Oh, no. Mr. Silverfish is a good shot. That tends rather to be the problem, in fact. Cuddy looked at the crash helmet again. It's the ivory, you see. Ah, said Cuddy, not seeing. Elephants? Ivory without elephants. Transmuted ivory. Sound commercial venture. I thought you were working on gold. Ah, yes. Of course, you people know all about gold, said Sendivoge. Oh, yes, said Cuddy, reflecting on the phrase, you people. The gold, said Sendivoge thoughtfully, is turning out to be a bit tricky. How long have you been trying? 300 years. That's a long time. But we've been working on the ivory for only a week, and it's going very well, said the alchemist quickly, except for some side effects, which we'll doubtless soon be able to sort out. He pushed open a door. It was a large room, heavily outfitted with the usual badly ventilated furnaces, rows of bubbling crucibles, and one stuffed alligator. Things floated in jars. The air smelled of a limited life expectancy. That's a good line. A lot of equipment had been moved away, however, to make room for a billiard table. Half a dozen alchemists were standing around it in the manner of men poised to run. It's the third this week, said Sendivoge gloomily. He nodded to a figure bent over a cue. Mr. Silverfish, he began. Quiet! Game on! Said the head alchemist, squinting at the white ball. Sendivoge glanced at the score rail. 21 points, he said. My word! Perhaps we're adding just the right amount of camphor to the nitrocellulose after all. There was a click.
The cue ball rolled away, bounced off the cushion, and then accelerated. White smoke poured off it as it bore down on an innocent cluster of red balls. Silverfish shook his head. "Unstable," he said. "Everybody down!" Everyone in the room ducked, except for the two watchmen, one of whom was in a sense pre-ducked, and the other of whom was several minutes behind events. The black ball took off on a column of flame, whiffled past Detritus's face, trailing black smoke, and then shattered a window. The green ball was staying in one spot, but spinning furiously. The other balls cannoned back and forth, occasionally bursting into flame or caroming off the walls. A red one hit Detritus between the eyes, curved back onto the table, holed itself in the middle pocket, and then blew up. There was silence, except for the occasional bout of coughing. Silverfish appeared through the oily smoke, and, with a shaking hand, moved the score point one notch with the burning end of his cue. "1," he said. "Oh well. Back to the crucible. Someone order another billiard table."
"'Scuse me," said Cuddy, prodding him in the knee.
"Who's there?"
"Down here."
Silverfish looked down. "Oh, are you a dwarf?" Cuddy gave him a blank stare.
"Are you a giant?" he said.
"Me? Of course not."
"Ah, then I must be a dwarf, yes. And that's a troll behind me," said Cuddy. "Night, BBAB." I'll be here on Friday, so hopefully I'll see you then." Detritus pulled himself into something resembling attention. "We've come to see if you can tell us what's on this paper," said Cuddy.
"Yer,"
said Detritus. Silverfish looked at it.
"Oh, yes," he said. "Some of old Leonard's stuff. Well?"
"Leonard?"
said Cuddy.
He glared at Detritus. "Write this down," he snapped.
"Leonard of Quirm,"
said the alchemist. Cuddy still looked lost.
"Never heard of him,"
said Silverfish. "Can't say I have, sir."
"I thought everyone knew about Leonard de Quirm. Quite barmy. But a genius, too."
"Was he an alchemist?"
Write this down, write this down."
Detritus looked around blearily for a burnt bit of wood and a handy wall.
"Leonard? No, he didn't belong to a guild. Or he belonged to all the guilds, I suppose. He got around quite a bit. He tinkered, if you know what I mean."
"No, sir."
"He painted a bit and messed about with mechanisms. Any old thing."
"Or a hammer and chisel, even," thought Detritus.
"This," said
Silverfish,
"is a formula for... Oh, well, I might as well tell you it's hardly a big secret. It's a formula for what we called number 1 powder. Sulfur, saltpeter, and charcoal. You use it in fireworks. Any fool could make it up, but it looks odd because it's written back to front."
"This sounds important," hissed Cuddy to the troll.
"Oh, no. He always used to write back to front," said Silverfish. "He was odd like that, but very clever all the same. Haven't you seen his portrait of the Mona Og?"
"I don't think so." Silverfish handed the parchment to Detritus, who squinted at it as if he knew what it meant. Maybe he could write on this, he thought.
The teeth followed you around the room. Amazing. In fact, some people said they followed them out of the room and all the way down the street.
The teeth of the Mona Og. Wow. I think we should talk to Mr. Daquarm, said Cuddy.
Oh, you could do that. You could do that, certainly, said Silverfish. But he might not be in a position to listen. He disappeared a couple of years ago.
Then, when I fight something to write with, thought Detritus, I have to find someone to teach me how write. Disappeared? How? Said Cuddy.
We think, said Silverfish, leaning closer, that he found a way of making himself invisible.
Really?
Because, said Silverfish,
nodding conspiratorially,
no one's seen him.
Ah, said Cuddy.
This
is just off the top of my head, you understand. But I suppose he couldn't just have gone somewhere where you couldn't see him?
Nah, that wouldn't be like old Leonard. He wouldn't disappear, but he might vanish.
Oh.
He was a bit unhinged, if you know what I mean. Head too full of brains. Ha! I remember he had this idea once of getting lightning out of lemons. Hey, Sendivoge, you remember Leonard and his lightning lemons?
Sendivoge made little circular motions alongside his head with one finger.
Oh, yes. If you stick copper and zinc rods in the lemon, hey presto, you get tame lightning. Man was an idiot. Oh, not an idiot, said Silverfish, picking up a billiard ball that had miraculously escaped the detonations. Just so sharp he kept cutting himself, as my granny used to say. Lightning lemons. Where's the sense in that? It was as bad as his voices in the sky machine. I told him, Leonard, I said, what are wizards for, eh? There's perfectly normal magic available for that kind of thing. Lightning lemons. It'll be men with wings next. And you know what he said? You know what he said? He said, funny you should say that. Poor old chap.
Even Cuddy joined in the laughter. Yep. This is an interesting bit here that I've kind of thought about before, not necessarily in regards to Discworld, and it's not an original thought, of course, but there's perfectly normal magic available for that kind of thing. The idea of a world with magic, how would that affect their technological development? Right? Because we invent things when there's a need for them. So if you can do things with magic, then that potentially removes the need to do those said things technologically. So if I can just psychically call someone, then there's not necessarily a need for a telephone. So, why invent it? But then you get to like techno magic and using magic to power things. I don't know. It's just an interesting sort of trail of thought to go down. Even Cuddy joined in the laughter. "And did you try it?" he said afterwards.
"Try what?"
said Silverfish.
"Har, har, har,"
said Detritus, toiling behind the others. "Putting the metal rods in the lemons?"
"Don't be a damn fool." "What dis letter mean?"
said Detritus, pointing at the paper.
They looked. "Oh, that's not a symbol,"
said Silverfish.
"That's just old Leonard's way. He was always doodling in margins. Doodle, doodle, doodle. I told him, you should call yourself Mr. Doodle."
"I thought it was some alchemy thing," said Cuddy. "It looks a bit like a crossbow without the bow. And this word, Inoget, what does that mean?"
"Search me. Sounds barbarian to me. Anyway, if that's all, officer, we've got some serious research to do,"
said Silverfish, tossing the fake ivory ball up in the air and catching it again.
"We're not all daydreamers like poor old Leonard."
"Enoget," said Cuddy, turning the paper round and run. "Thegonne." Silverfish missed the ball. Cuddy got behind Detritus just in time. Well, I read all 8 pages. I forget that 8 pages in this book takes not quite so long as 8 pages in one of the Belgariad books. So, it feels actually quite a bit faster. Yay, accomplishments. So parts of that were difficult in the whole blatant racism kind of way. It's tricky, isn't it? It's better than when a book is written in such a way where you think that the author is racist. Because reading this, you can tell Sir Terry is very self-aware of what he's writing, right? Vimes has that whole, like, he doesn't like dwarfs and trolls, but he also doesn't like anybody, so it's different. But those nobles that he was egging on were clearly actually just racist. And Lady Ramkin being like, he's an old friend. Well, I've known him a long time. I don't like him. Yeah, I definitely feel like the tone of this book feels a little more serious to me. Vimes has come off as excused, just flawed, yeah. Well, and also, he he's rude to dwarfs and trolls, and he says he doesn't like dwarfs and trolls. He's also rude to people. He says he doesn't like people. But at the same time, he's very... Like, he's rude to them, but he's also very, like, respectful to them as well. Like, he's not... He might say rude things when they're not around, but he's polite and respectful when actually talking to them and dealing with them, and, you know, in the workshop, for example, leave the place tidy. Pratchett isn't trying to say that Vimes... Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, I feel like Guards felt more lighthearted. I mean, there's jokes in this. What could you make of this? Well, I can make a hat. And the repeat at the Alchemists Guild. Ugh. But I feel like in general the tone of Guards was a little lighter. I mean, there was serious content going on for sure, but like the elucidated brethren were one long running joke. The satirical commentary in this one bites more, and that's the other thing, right? Is I mean, you were dealing with sort of murder in Guards, and kind of like a coup, and then the dragon and everything. But in this one, it's a little more street level and grim, and dealing with, you know, racism and things, classism and racism. So it's interesting how like a comedy fantasy series can also be so, like you said, biting and like uncomfortable. It's definitely well done. And it's difficult for me to tell now. Um, you know, having read this book several times before, it's tough. Like, I see the clues as they're dropping, and I'm going, "Oh, this is so obvious." And I'm guessing, like, you're all very clever people. I'm guessing that it's obvious to everyone else, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, is it obvious because I know what's going on? Is it more obvious because we're reading it out loud, I wonder? I mean, there are some bits that definitely, like, what do you make of it? It's like one of those running jokes that reminds me from Star Wars episode of The Muppet Show. Hmm. Well, and that joke, the I love your outfit, also I think had another level in that when Mark Hamill appeared on The Muppet Show, it was before, what, episode 5 or 6? And the outfit he wore on The Muppet Show, like, it was just before one of the next movies released, and the outfit he wore on The Muppet Show hadn't yet um, been seen before because it wasn't in previous movies. It was like a new one for the new movie. So it was kind of like a spoiler thing, like, hey, look, you know, this is a new Star Wars thing. Like, look, you haven't seen this Star Wars fashion before. As, I don't know, a layer to that joke. I'm probably explaining something that you already know, but I thought that was interesting. As a random piece of information that, like, why is that in my head? One of those things that I absorbed somewhere, probably, you know, some random post online. Mm-hmm. He does voices now. I'm pretty sure he did voices before Star Wars. I'm pretty sure he has, you know, uh, yeah, I guess it would be that sort of level layer to that joke would have been much more obvious when it aired because, the people watching the show would also be like people looking forward to seeing the new Star Wars movie. Well, this has been fun. I feel a little difficult reading some of these things. I see that Slightly Stupid Bear is streaming Resident Evil 7. I think he's doing some sort of spookier gameplay for October. So I'll set up a little raid to go over and say hi to him. Yeah. Oh, let's not talk about the holiday special. Never mind, I'm right. Oh, about the voices thing. So, thanks for reading with me. Um, I'll be here on Friday. So I hope everyone has a good rest of the week. Wish me luck for, house stuff. I'll see y'all on Friday. Say hi to Bear. Have a good night, everyone. Bye.